I'm going to have to ask you to move, sir. We're setting up for a private ceremony. The voice was young, crisp, and carried an undercurrent of impatience that sliced through the quiet reverence of the memorial park. Samuel Croft didn't turn. His gnarled fingers, the knuckles swollen with age and the skin mapped with the faint, silvery lines of 1,000 repairs, remained gently pressed against the cold, black granite. He was tracing a name etched into the stone. David Davy Jones. Patu. A boy he'd known. A boy who never got to be an old man sitting on a park bench. Did you hear me, old-timer? The voice was closer now, accompanied by the squeak of polished leather boots on the flagstone path. This area is being restricted. You need to clear out. Slowly, Samuel drew his hand back, the chill of the memorial clinging to his fingertips. He turned on the simple metal bench, his movements deliberate, economical. Before him stood a young Navy lieutenant, ramrod straight, his white uniform so pristine it seemed to hurt the eyes in the afternoon sun. He was the very picture of modern military authority, from the sharp creases in his trousers to the confident set of his jaw. His name tag read Grayson. Samuel's eyes, a pale but startlingly clear blue, met the lieutenant's. They held no anger, no defiance, just a deep, quiet stillness, like the surface of a deep lake. "I heard you, son," he said, his voice a low, gravelly rasp. Lieutenant Grayson's lip curled slightly. The use of the word son was a casual familiarity he found grating, especially from someone who looked like he'd wandered in off the street. The old man wore a simple, worn brown jacket over a faded flannel shirt and khaki pants that had seen better decades. He looked insignificant, a relic. "It's Lieutenant Grayson," he corrected sharply, "and I don't have time for a debate. The Admiral will be here in less than an hour, and this entire plaza needs to be cordoned off and swept. So, if you don't mind," he gestured dismissively with a gloved hand toward the park exit. Samuel's gaze drifted from the lieutenant back to the wall of names. "The Admiral," he repeated softly, more to himself than to the officer. "They're still making those, are they?" A flash of irritation crossed Grayson's face. He saw this as mockery, the ramblings of a senile old man trying to be clever. He took a step closer, his posture becoming more imposing, a tactic that usually worked on civilians. "Look, Pops, I respect my elders, but I have a job to do. This is a secure naval event. You don't have clearance to be here. Now, are you going to move, or do I have to get base security to escort you out?" The threat hung in the air, heavy and ugly. A young couple walking their dog on a nearby path slowed, their curiosity piqued by the officer's aggressive tone toward the quiet old man. Samuel didn't seem to notice the threat or the audience. His focus was internal. The scent of the freshly cut grass, the distant hum of a helicopter, the cold, unyielding feel of the granite he'd just touched. It was all a key, turning a lock deep inside him. The world of polished boots and impatient lieutenants began to fade at the edges, replaced by the sting of salt water and the roar of a C-130's engines. He looked down at his own hands, seeing not the liver spots and wrinkles of a 90-year-old, but the strong, capable hands of a 25-year-old, stained with grease and wrapped around the static line of a parachute. "Clearance," Samuel murmured, the word tasting strange on his tongue. "I used to have that." Grayson scoffed, his patience completely gone. "Right. I'm sure you did. Now, on your feet. Let's go." He reached out and placed a firm, condescending hand on Samuel's shoulder, intending to lift him from the bench. The touch was the final turn of the key. It wasn't the pressure. It was the feel of the rough fabric of his own jacket under Grayson's grip. It felt just like the canvas of the harness, cinched tight against his collarbone. The world dissolved. The air is black ice, a solid wall of freezing wind screaming past the open ramp. Below, the ocean is an endless, churning void, invisible but for the faint whitecaps that look like angry teeth in the sliver of moonlight. He's third in line. In front of him is Davy Jones, just a kid from Ohio, his eyes wide but his jaw set. Davy flashes him a thumbs up. Samuel nods back, his own heart a steady, heavy drum against his ribs. This isn't a drill. The intelligence is solid, a high-value target on a remote coastal installation, a place that officially doesn't exist. They are ghosts, about to fall from the sky to haunt a place no one will ever know they visited. The green light flashes. The jump master yells. The first man is gone. Then Davy. Samuel shuffles forward, the weight of his gear a familiar comfort. He hooks his static line. He feels the cold metal clip, a final connection to the world he is about to leave. He takes a breath, the air burning his lungs. And then he leaps into the violent, shrieking darkness. The shock of the chute deploying is a brutal punch, jerking him upwards. Then, a terrifying silence, broken only by the whistle of the wind through his risers. He looks down, trying to spot the others, but sees nothing, just blackness. He hits the water hard. The cold is a physical blow, a stunning, paralyzing force that drives the air from his body. He fights the panic, his training kicking in. Release the harness. Inflate the vest. Find the waterproof bag with his rifle. His movements are automatic, drilled into him over thousands of hours until they were more instinct than thought. He found Davy a few minutes later, treading water, his teeth chattering. "CC cold, Chief," the boy managed. Samuel just grunted. "Colder where we're going, kid. Now shut up and swim." He had to be hard. Weakness was a disease that could kill them all in this environment. They swam for what felt like an eternity, the icy water leaching the strength from their limbs, until their boots finally scraped against sand and rock. They were the first two on the beach. "I said, are you deaf?" Lieutenant Grayson's voice pulled him from the icy water, back onto the warm flagstones of the park. Samuel blinked, the clear blue of his eyes now clouded with the memory. He looked at the young officer's hand still on his shoulder, then back at the name on the wall. David Davy Jones. Patu. He never made it off that beach. A stray round from a jittery sentry. It was over in a second. A life extinguished in the dark, on a mission no one would ever know about, for a cause he believed in with a boy's pure heart. Samuel had been the one to carry him back to the extraction point. The weight of him was a memory seared into his bones. "The stone is cold," Samuel said, his voice flat, distant. But the water was colder. Grayson stared at him, bewildered by the nonsensical statement. He was done playing games. "That's it. I'm calling security." He pulled out his phone, his thumb hovering over the screen. "You have 5 seconds to be walking away." Samuel slowly, deliberately, pushed himself to his feet. He wasn't fast, but there was a steadiness to his motion, a core of solid strength that belied his frail appearance. He stood almost as tall as the lieutenant, and his gaze, now locked on Grayson's, was unwavering. The confusion was gone, replaced by a profound weariness, a sadness that seemed as old as the granite wall itself. "You wear that uniform," Samuel said, his voice quiet but carrying an immense weight. "You stand here, on this ground, paid for by boys like him." He nodded toward the name on the wall. "And you think your authority comes from those shiny bars on your collar." Grayson's face flushed with anger. "You have no right." "This ground is my right," Samuel interrupted, his voice never rising but cutting through the lieutenant's indignation like a razor. "This memorial is my right. I have receipts." The sheer audacity of the old man left Grayson momentarily speechless. He was about to unleash a tirade, to finally call security and have this disrespectful vagrant hauled away, when the smooth, near-silent purr of an electric motor announced the arrival of a vehicle. A gleaming black sedan, with official flags mounted on its front fenders, pulled up to the curb behind them. A driver in a crisp service dress uniform quickly exited and opened the rear passenger door. A tall, imposing figure emerged, his uniform bristling with ribbons and topped with the 2 silver stars of a rear admiral on his shoulder boards. He was a man who radiated command, his face a stern mask of discipline. Lieutenant Grayson snapped to attention, his back rigid, a perfect salute executed with textbook precision. "Admiral Jennings." "Welcome, sir. We are just securing the area for you." He cast a venomous glare at Samuel, as if to say, "Now you're really in for it." Admiral Jennings barely glanced at him. His eyes, sharp and intelligent, swept the scene. The flustered junior officer, the quiet old man standing by the memorial wall, the name his hand was near. The admiral's gaze fixed on Samuel. His stern expression began to melt. First, a flicker of disbelief, then dawning recognition, and finally, a wave of something that looked like awe. He took a step forward, then another, his movements losing their military stiffness and becoming more human, more humble. He walked right past the saluting Lieutenant Grayson as if he were a statue. He stopped a foot in front of Samuel Croft. The park fell silent. The young couple with the dog had stopped, watching intently. Even the birds seemed to hold their breath. Admiral Jennings, a man who commanded fleets and advised generals, a man before whom junior officers trembled, slowly raised his hand to his brow. He didn't offer a casual greeting or a cursory salute. He rendered the sharpest, most profound salute of his life. His back was iron, his arm a perfect angle, his gaze locked on the old man in the worn brown jacket. He held it, silent and unwavering. Samuel looked at the Admiral, a flicker of recognition in his own eyes. He gave a slow, tired nod. "It's been a long time, Mike," he said. The Admiral finally dropped his salute, but the look of reverence remained. "It has, Master Chief. Too long." He then turned, his entire demeanor shifting back to ice-cold command. His eyes landed on Lieutenant Grayson, who was still standing at a confused, awkward version of attention, his salute long forgotten. "Lieutenant," the Admiral's voice was dangerously low. "Report." Grayson swallowed hard, his face pale. "Sir, this civilian refused to vacate a restricted area. I was just about to have him escorted off the premises, sir." Admiral Jennings stared at him for a long, terrible moment. "This civilian?" he repeated, the words dripping with contempt. "You are standing on a plaza dedicated to the heroes of the naval special warfare community, and you call this man this civilian?" He stepped closer to Grayson, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper that seemed to carry across the entire park. "Your file says you graduated top of your class at Annapolis, that you aced every course on naval history. Tell me, Lieutenant, did they ever teach you about the pioneers? The men who wrote the doctrine? The men who forged the trident in fire and ice before it even had a name?" "Sir, Grayson stammered, his confidence evaporating under the Admiral's fury. "This civilian," the Admiral said, gesturing towards Samuel, "is Master Chief Petty Officer Samuel Croft. Does that name mean anything to you, Lieutenant?" Grayson's mind went blank. The name was unfamiliar. He shook his head numbly. The Admiral let out a humorless laugh. "Of course it doesn't. Most of his records are still classified deep black. Let me educate you. You see that name on the wall? David Jones. Master Chief Croft pulled him from the water during Operation Night Tide in 1962. He carried that boy's body for 2 miles over hostile terrain after he was killed, so he could be brought home. That operation? You won't find it in your history books. It was a suicide mission, and only 2 men came back. He is one of them." The Admiral wasn't finished. He took another step, forcing Grayson to shrink back. This old-timer was one of the founding members of SEAL Team 2. He didn't just pass BUD/S. He designed half the evolutions they still use today. He was a master of underwater demolition before you were even a thought in your father's mind. He conducted clandestine operations in places your polished maps don't even show. The medals he was awarded are locked in a vault because the missions they were for officially never happened. Every word was a hammer blow, shattering Grayson's arrogant worldview. He stared at Samuel, at the worn jacket and the kind, tired eyes, and saw a figure of legend standing before him. The quiet old man was a giant. "You stand there in your crisp uniform, so proud of your rank, so quick to dismiss a man based on his age and his clothes." The Admiral continued, his voice resonating with righteous anger. "You wanted to know if he had clearance? Lieutenant, this man is the clearance. He has bled more for this country than you could ever imagine. He has sacrificed more than you will ever be asked to. He trained the men who became legends. He trained the man who trained your current commanding officer. Hell, he trained the man who trained me." That final statement landed with the force of a physical impact. Grayson swayed slightly, his face as white as his uniform. He looked from the furious Admiral to the quiet Master Chief. He saw it now. The stillness wasn't passivity, it was control. The quietness wasn't weakness, it was the calm at the center of a hurricane. He finally understood. His throat was dry. He turned to Samuel, his entire body trembling with shame. "Master Chief, sir, I had no idea. I am so sorry. My conduct was inexcusable." The apology was a broken, pathetic thing. Samuel watched him, his expression softening. There was no triumph in his eyes, only a deep, abiding sadness. He saw not an arrogant officer, but a foolish boy who had much to learn. He raised a hand, placing it gently on the lieutenant's rigid shoulder. the same spot where Grayson had placed his own hand in condescension just minutes before. "It's all right, son," Samuel said, his voice kind. "The uniform doesn't make the man. It just gives him a chance to show what kind of man he is. Remember that." He looked past Grayson to Admiral Jennings. "He's just young, Mike. We were all young once." The act of grace was more humbling than the Admiral's entire tirade. It offered no escape, no enemy to blame. It simply held up a mirror to Grayson's own failure. Tears welled in the young lieutenant's eyes. Admiral Jennings escorted Samuel to the bench and sat with him, not as a superior officer, but as a student sitting with a master. They spoke in low tones, two warriors from different eras sharing a moment of quiet communion before the wall of names. Lieutenant Grayson remained standing where he was, a solitary, shamed figure, rooted to the spot, replaying his own arrogance and the old man's profound dignity over and over in his mind. He had been given an order to clear the plaza for an admiral, and in his haste to follow it, he had nearly thrown out the very soul of the place. He understood now that true authority isn't worn on a collar or shouted through commands. It's earned in cold water and dark nights, and it's carried quietly, with humility, for a lifetime. We walk through a world of hidden heroes every single day. The quiet man bagging your groceries, the elderly woman tending her garden, the janitor mopping the floors. We judge them by their worn jackets and slow steps, never seeing the invisible medals they carry, never knowing the wars they have fought, both at home and abroad. Today, let this be a reminder to look deeper, to see past the surface and honor the history that walks among us. Before you dismiss someone, pause and remember that you might just be talking to a giant. If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Let's spread a message of respect,